This is Beekeeper Confidential, a show about the curious lives of bees and their beekeepers. I'm your host, Mandy Shaw. In today's episode, we meet with Jerermy Campbell from Keepin. He's a beekeeper based out of Texas who also moonlights as a member of the Bee-Informed Partnership Technical Transfer Team. Be a bee on the wall and listen in as we talk about what it takes to earn a living as an urban beekeeper, misconceptions about bees and hornets, invasive species, and finding bodies in walls. The beekeeping community is so rich with different personalities and different methodologies and backgrounds and origin stories. So that's what this show is all about.
And that's awesome. It's funny that you mentioned the whole being in the initial phase, and I want to tell everyone about bees and I know everything. There's a guy that a client of mine, and after the first year of beekeeping with him, because he had already been trying to do it for a year or two, and he was getting all these losses, and it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And so we're going to the bees after one day, and we get out, and it was kind of a bad day. We found some bad stuff in the hives, and he said, Jerermy, ever since I've started working with you, I feel like I know less about bees. I was like, that means you're doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I am I'm in my 5th year with bees, and my access to actually doing beekeeping is very limited now because I have my kids with me all the time. And so it's been so much more about observation and trusting in the bee's natural process.
Yes.
And that's kind of a hard thing because
yes,
we're really trained as beekeepers that we got to get in our hives every 2 weeks and we got to stop those swarms, and we, just very different. It's very different, but also feels good to sort of be in that place where it's like, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I told him, you just gotta look. I mean, he said I just expected the bees to take care of themselves because they're natural and they know what they're doing. And I said, well, yes, but natural things also die and fail, so you need to adjust your expectations. It's totally okay to keep bees that way, but you need to have, you need to expect to have some losses if you're not going to do certain things to manage them, and that's just how it works in nature. It's totally normal.
Yeah,
and it's okay. You know?
And I think for me, I have enough good stock in my apiaries that they can kind of handle less management.
That's good.
Yeah. But
that's the kind of bees you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, my first year I bought commercial bees, and it was like they died very quickly without mite treatments, So
yeah,
it was a hard lesson. And I was like, okay, I'm not buying bees again. I'm staying local.
Yeah, I love catching swarms. This has been such a great swarm catching year in Portland.
Yeah, sorry, where are you based out of again? Portland?
Portland, yeah, up in Oregon.
Okay.
And you're in Texas, right?
Right, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow, you guys are hit pretty hard right now with COVID.
Yes, the numbers are going up every day, and people still don't want to wear their masks. It's kind of crazy.
Wow,
it's nuts. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's insane. Like the municipalities have finally started saying, like, you have to wear a mask in public. You have to wear a mask to do business. And these stores put the signs all over the windows and the whatever. Everything's got a sign on it that says you have to wear a mask, and people just blatantly ignore it. They just walk right in. And like I even found a viral video the other day of a woman just absolutely throwing a fit, like throwing her groceries on the ground or something over being told she had to wear a mask. And I was like, oh, I'm listening to what she's saying. I'm like, she says F Dallas. I was like, of course it's in Dallas.
Wow. Did you guys have a shelter in place order at any time or school closures?
Oh, yeah.
So you were doing all of that.
All of the above.
Wow.
All of the above. Shelter in place, everything. But the problem is it's so like laissez-faire, and they're not trying to enforce it, and and that's okay. Businesses have started to pick up the slack, and now finally with the resurgence governors are starting to wear masks on camera, and they're starting to like, actually, tell
Lead
people,
by
they're not
example?
strong enough. Yeah, lead by example, precisely.
Yeah.
But they love my freedoms. Don't take my freedoms. I'm like, all right, well, you have
Oof.
the freedom to like not shop anywhere because you're an idiot. So
Yeah. It's interesting to me how wearing a mask has become such a political divide,
statement.
a statement. Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
I don't know.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Not even the yellow man in chief will would say like, oh, follow these guidelines, and it's like they still don't want to. I don't know. I'm not trying to make it politically divisive either, but
sometimes
dang it does seem to be a certain kind of people.
This year, like I feel like everything's coming to such a nasty boiling head right now that I mean, I understand why people are feeling so on edge and angst and stressed out and scared and like, yeah, all of that. Now, how has it been for your business?
Well, it's been it hasn't affected it too much beyond the removals, really. The bee removals, I have to adjust the pricing a bit. Because people, some people like, I just did a bid today for a woman who's a wedding planner, and I said, oh, you're having a bad time right now. And so anyways, so I've had to adjust my pricing a bit. But really, I was never a big volume guy in terms of removals. So I've actually seen a slight increase in removal frequency anyways. And still have same beekeeping clients. I had a couple clients drop out, but not COVID related. They were just kind of like not feeling it, and that happens with a lot of people. They get the bee buzz or whatever, and then they kind of like, wow, this is a lot of work, and like, sometimes I get stung. Like, what do I?
Right, and why am I not getting any honey?
Yeah, or why did they die? Right, and it's like, well, you started with one hive, and you kind of had me over infrequently, and you didn't read, and you didn't do anything, and it's like, well, you're going to need to have a couple of highs if you want to learn something, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So but overall, not a big change. I mean, I usually don't have to work from inside of people's homes. So that's the nice part. And then surprisingly, no one wants to, hang around you when you're in a bee suit, and they're not. I don't get it. Like,
what is so weird? I kind of experienced a little bit of the opposite of that. With swarm catching this year, like going out in the community and collecting swarms, because everybody's home, they all want to come out and talk about everything that they've ever had having anything to do with bees.
Yes.
And there have been moments where I just feel like, everybody, please step back.
Oh, that's always been the case.
I'm trying to work here, and my kids are over there climbing on top of the van, and I'm like trying to get...
You're trying to pick up a swarm. Oh, God. Yeah. I can only imagine. I don't have children. I can only imagine what it feels like being a beekeeper and a parent.
My God. Well, I think that there's this image of little kids in bee suits, and they're learning about nature, and they're learning about biology, and they're learning how honey is made, and there's something very cute about that. Like, but when it comes down to it, it's really, really frustrating because they're moving on ultra speed. Their minds are moving so fast, and then they get tired.
They have a short attention span.
Yeah, so it's they don't help me a whole lot.
No, kids are always no. In the bees, you actually have extra stuff to manage. Like, but don't tip that over.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Stop.
Yeah. Well, I just want to apologize at how flaky I've been about
that's cool.
setting this up, but here we are, and I'm happy to do it. So glad to meet you, and I'm excited to talk with you today.
Likewise, and don't even worry about it, because I'm equally flaky, and I came to you. I came to you about this, so don't feel bad.
It's kind of nice.
I'm sure you're busy.
My first year of doing the show, I was really at times very hard pressed to find my next guest, and that's sort of shifted, and it's exciting when there's people like, hey, I want to come on. I want to talk about what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I thought because I heard you do some guests and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I wanna see what, like how like I wanna contribute to that, Like I wanna
Yeah.
see how that fit how what I'm doing fits in with that. And yeah, oh yeah. It's a cool show too. You have a very like it's a very chill, simple vibe to it, It's not overly engineered. I like it.
Thank
So
you. So you just returned from working with Be Informed Partnership.
correct.
I love them. Tell me about what you were doing.
So being foreign partnership has me going on trips occasionally to assist them with their tech transfer teams, which there's many facets, of course, to their business. I say there, I'm part of them, but
I have the
infrequently.
biggest crush on that job.
I know, right? I did too. I did too, and it's a crazy story. I got involved with them, but yeah, they. So when we go on trips, I'm with the teams, which they're getting like really into the nitty gritty of it. Like they're the ones collecting the samples, they're the ones scheduling things with the beekeepers, they're meeting the beekeepers. There's a strict, they have to adhere to all the confidentiality stuff we do because beekeepers want to
Well,
know
that's
stuff about
perfect
other
because this is
beekeepers.
Beekeeper Confidential. So
I
you could
know,
tell us
right?
everything.
So
So,
yeah, I
but
mean,
you're not going into like private apiaries. You're working with businesses. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, so we're working with guys that have as few as, 700, 800 hives and as many as like 80,000 or something. So it's a wide range of people you get to see. And it's amazing because you get to kind of get this snapshot into a bunch of different businesses. You're a passive sort of observer, and especially in my case, being like a helper, and and you get to see something that even these beekeepers don't get to see, which is a snapshot of multiple apiaries in a similar geographical area, engaging in similar management practices.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super cool. And yeah, and so we're going through and we're mostly taking samples from hives, samples of bees, measuring for varroa, measuring for disease, sending things to the lab, testing new products. Sometimes we're working, as almost like it seems like researchers for hire. So that's really cool. We
Mm-hmm.
get to really, it's exciting because I don't know how I got into this because they should, by all means, they should have been like, no, you don't know enough. You're not part of the club. But they do. They let me come along and I get to see, pretty much like the cutting edge of some of this stuff. And get to hear these guys' deepest secrets. Not probably not, but you get to see their management practices anyways.
Yeah.
And the proof is in the pudding. It's not like they're going to say one thing and it's going to be another way. Because you're
Yeah.
like, well, I just looked at like 50 of your hives, so.
In
But
comparing apiaries that have large numbers but vastly different numbers, are you seeing similar management practices across the board or are they very different? And does it have anything to do with the numbers of hives that they're caring for?
oh, absolutely. I would say scale plays a big part in how people manage their bees. And obviously, as you would assume, the smaller guys put a little more effort and a little more attention. Each hive will probably get looked at more often.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you get those are the guys that go out with you into the field and look with you while you're working. Those are the guys that want to get eyes on their own hives. And then, yeah, at some point, I think at some point with any commercial business in bees, it goes from you go from being a beekeeper to being like basically a supply chain manager or a logistics manager. And so, yeah, the bigger the apiaries, the more that we're working with their foremen or we're working with their
Mm-hmm.
employees or whatever. And, that gets a little, that has its own challenges because anyway, so ideally they would like to see consistency, of course, across all their hives. They want to have the best hives. They want things to be consistent, but it's way more challenging to achieve that goal when there's lots of bees. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think these larger companies definitely have to play with the numbers in a different way than the smaller guys do.
Mm-hmm. When they when they bring you guys in, is it because there's a problem or is it because they're participating in the research?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Our so there are people that go out in the company that go out and try to, kind of spread the good word, if you will, get people to get onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of an investment from those guys. They pay and then they get a certain amount of visits they're entitled to. And then, we're trying to track these hives longitudinally, looking at the same hives as often as we can. Of course, these guys are moving around. They're tearing them down and making splits and building them back up, and you have losses. And but yeah, it's occasionally you'll get called. Well, I don't get called, but whoever I'm assisting will get some kind of call like, oh, they think they got sprayed, so we're gonna take an extra pesticide sample or whatever. Or oh,
Mm-hmm.
they're worried about, they had some losses, and they want to know what their Nosema numbers are looking like. So
Yeah.
instead of sending 1 out of 10 samples to the lab, we're going to send all the samples to the lab to be double checked for Nosema, because we can't check for that in the field, of course. The only thing that they get in real time are mite numbers, and for a lot of commercial beekeepers, that's most of what they want. They want to get sort of they just want to put their finger in the wind, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
about what the state of the mites are is the biggest goal. But on the side, yeah, we're collecting data for a long-term sort of research accumulation thing. So.
And so what was your motivation, or what was the attraction for you to get involved and work with them?
Oh wow. So I was already I don't remember, maybe 4 years into beekeeping. I was already kind of doing it for a business on the side. Maybe 5 years. Gosh, I can't even remember now. I've only been working there a little over a year. Anyhow, yeah, I think my main motivation was to learn quicker.
Mm-hmm.
I consult with a lot of hobby beekeepers at home, and a lot of them are older than me and have been keeping bees longer than I've been keeping bees. So I want to offer them something they don't have. And so for me, I had already worked with a couple of different like commercial beekeeping situations, and every time I came out of it, it was like I'd go back to my bees and I'd see them with different eyes. It was it could be after a 2 week trip, and I feel like I just grew a year, in knowledge. And so yeah, my main motivation was self growth and in that sort of thing. But I also am just super nosy about what's going on in the commercial beekeeping world. So.
Well, did you discover anything unexpected? Any surprises?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I kind of already knew some of the management practices, but it certainly did surprise me. I kind of assumed commercial beekeepers didn't have as many losses as they actually do.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at like rebuilding and making splits and nukes, and then they've got winter losses, and then they've got losses from transporting the colonies, and then when you factor it all in, the losses can actually be pretty high, which is
And
really
how do they
surprising to
really
me.
keep track of it?
Right. Everybody does it differently. It's like some guys got a big notebook, some guys got a big database. Some of them are more, these larger operations are probably more depending on their foreman.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the most part, they've got sort of a regular routine, if you will. Like we always put this many hives in this yard, and we always put
Mm-hmm.
that many hives in that yard. And then they go through, when their teams go through and they see how many losses they have, they can sort of take just a general head count. And so I imagine that the data tends to accumulate. And I think at any time, it's much like taking your blood pressure. It can tell you a lot, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of, when you ask the guys, oh, how many colonies are you managing? You usually get like a range, right? Like they don't say like exactly this many. They don't know precisely how many, and honestly, they're probably about to make splits anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think overall they tend to, Yeah, everybody's got a different style. Some guys are more trusting and don't want to know those numbers as much, and then some guys are very specific because they are trying to fulfill pollination contracts, or they're trying to,
Hmm.
they have goals. They all have different goals. Some guys are looking more at honey, some are looking more at pollination. Some of them would rather sell a lot more bees than the other. So
Yeah.
I'm sure to those guys the numbers matter more when they're selling bees versus, if they're just trying to make a great honey crop, it's not quite as important.
Yeah. I mean, I could keep asking you questions about that job and things that you learned while you were there, but I don't want to just focus on that because you do other
Sure.
things too. You also have a business where you do consulting and you do live bee removals. Do you want to talk
Yes.
about that? Or do you want to
I
talk about your origin story? It's really
what I guess an origin story is good. A short origin story would be in order. I think everybody gets their own
who
little
are
cool
you and why do you
story.
like bees?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, of course, I've got the classic. Grew up as a kid wanting to. As soon as I learned the word entomologist, I was like, I want to be that because bugs are so cool, right? And then I ended up going to college, and I went to college for a totally different field of study, and I did my undergrad, and I was out kind of in limbo, if you will, like trying to decide, am I going to get my master's degree? Like, what am I doing? And I was holding down like a part-time job or something. And yeah, like swarm of bees showed up in the parking lot. I didn't see them, but everybody else that had to park under that tree did. And they would come in and they'd say, oh, did you see the bees? Or those, you need to do something about those bees. And then finally some woman said, those bees are Africanized. You got to do something about this. And I'm like, like, what does that even mean? And so I start, of course, busting out the smartphone on my break, and I'm reading and reading and reading, and it's still not enough. So I started getting involved in forums and online discussions. And then finally, somebody's nice enough to say, hey, if you're so curious, why don't you come over here and check them out yourself? So yeah, went over, drove to Central Texas like 2 hours to go meet someone. I mean, I could have been murdered for all I knew. I'd never met this person in person, and here he's running like 100 colonies, and I don't know anything about bees. He's like, oh, I got an extra bee
Wow.
suit. Yeah. So we went through the bees, obviously he just, it was like a whirlwind. He just takes me through random inspections of different hives. I have no clue what I'm looking at, but it's amazing. And so he says, and I'm poor, right? I'm poor. I just got out of college. I've got stuff to pay off. I've got kind of like a low paying job. So I said, look, I'd love to buy some bees from you. I'd love to support your business, but, I'm poor. So he said, don't worry, take this used equipment back to your house, put it in your backyard. And if you catch a swarm, call me. And if you don't want the bees, I'll come pick them up. No worries. If you want the bees, you can just send me $50 for the used equipment
Oh
as a
my
thank you.
gosh.
So I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. He's kind of like not pressuring me, but like he's sort of like, come on, you'll like it. And I'm like, I know I'll like it, but like I'm kind of scared. Like, what do I even do with this? He's like, put it in your backyard. Well, how high up and where do I put it? All
Yeah.
those
Now
questions.
I have to ask what happened with the swarm of bees that was in a tree over the
Oh,
parking lot.
they just flew off.
Oh,
They were just
okay.
gone the next day. Yeah, I showed up the next day and they were gone. And right as I had learned, I did the post, I think I looked on
You're
Reddit
like,
or
I got
something,
the
and
box ready and everything.
exactly, I went through the whole like, oh, I'm gonna do it, and then of course I get there the next morning and they're gone. So yeah, it was kind of sad. It was a tiny swarm in retrospect,
Yeah.
and I got so lucky with that equipment. I put the equipment in my backyard and within 2 weeks had two swarms.
Oh
Just
my
move in.
gosh. They
Didn't have to
love
work
well
for it.
seasoned boxes.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't even watching because I didn't believe in it. But my brother, was taking out the dog, and he's like, "Man, there's a bunch of bees going in and out of your boxes. What's going on?" I was like, "What? Bees in the boxes?" So then I'm like, God, now I got to buy a bee suit and all this. So, and from there, you know how it goes. You're
Yeah.
doing beekeeping as a hobby, and then suddenly you're quitting your day job, and like people are telling you should do this and do that, and then you're making money, and it's like, okay, why am I? This is crazy.
Yeah.
So,
What have been
and
some
now
of
I love it
the
though.
harder parts of starting your business?
Oh gosh, the business part.
Yeah.
I love beekeeping. I love it. But I'm also wanted to do it on my terms, and I want to do it where I live, and I don't want to be running around the country and necessarily all the time. And so the hardest part really was deciding like what are these services worth? Who wants these services? How do I communicate? How these it evolved very gradually, and it took a lot of really good people in my life pushing me and saying,
Mhm.
hey, you should try this, you should try this, hey, not enough people are doing removals, you can make a little money doing that on the side. And so yeah, at first it was hard to say, hey, like, give me money and then I'll do this thing for you. And they're like, what thing? Like, how much? And like, nobody knows anything about bees. So it's like, they just kind of trust you. And so it's one of those things where I am always trying to find this medium of making sure I get paid for what I'm doing, but also doing what I love, and making sure it's like affordable and accessible, and
And
that
doesn't it
people.
feel a little bit the opposite of what we're taught growing up, that like when you are earning money and you're working, like it's hard and it's work, and that like
Absolutely.
not very many people get to really do what they love and make money doing it, or at least maybe not as many as there should be,
I completely agree. I
because
was
there's
definitely
like
raised that
a
way.
little bit of
Yes.
guilt. Like, but I'm having so much fun with this. You don't have
Is
to
this
pay
is this
me. It
real?
just made
Am
me
I being
feel
an adult?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I really
Yeah.
being an adult, or am I just having fun?
Yeah. I know
Yeah,
for
and I'm
me,
still
like
in that.
there was a turning point, and I'm sorry for any listeners who have already heard this story, but somebody called me to extract a colony out of a tree that had just fallen. They cut the tree down, it broke in half. There's bees 30 feet this direction, and then another clump of bees over here, and they're all confused, and it's a huge mess. And they asked me to do it, and I explained to them what it would take, and then I asked them who was paying for it, and they were like, nobody. Nobody's
Ew.
paying for it. I'm like, well, this is gonna be like, it's gonna take a couple days to take care of this, and that's like, they're like, but you would get the bees. Like, the bees might not survive this,
Yeah.
and like they might be sick. They might make my other bees sick. There's so many things that people don't realize when they are offering you freebies. You know what I mean? Do you get that?
Oh, yes. Oh, all the time. All the time. Wait, but I want to know, did you get paid? Did you get paid?
They wouldn't pay, so I didn't do it.
Oh,
And it was
oh
really
yeah.
hard. It was hard, like, oh my god, those
Yeah.
poor bees, I don't know if they're gonna find somebody,
Yeah.
but it was like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and making peace with that has been one of the biggest challenges for me, especially while you're doing the removal and you accidentally squish a few bees, or like you said, the bees are sick, they don't make it, and you're like, man, am I a bad beekeeper? Why did I screw this up? I killed these bees, and it's like, no, I didn't. These people were going to hire someone to exterminate these bees.
Yeah.
Something is better than nothing. But yeah, no, absolutely. A favorite metaphor of mine that I use is you would not expect, the arborist to cut down the tree for the lumber.
Right.
Obviously the arborist is going to take the lumber and use it. Of course, it's a resource. You're not going to use it, but there are better ways to get lumber than going onto people's houses one at a time and chopping down one dinky little tree. If I want more colonies, I'll make more colonies. I don't need these colonies one at a time, 8 hours at a time.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
and not only that, but yeah, I get the bee terrorists all the time, which is like, get the bees for free, or
Mhm.
they get it, and I'm like, well, if you get them, make sure you wear some protection, because it's very dangerous, and be safe, and maybe have someone take a video, because then I can show it to my other customers of why it's a horrible idea, and you could get hurt or screw something up, and I'm going to add $100 to my price if that's what you're doing. So, because then the bees are worthless to me if you've tried to poison them. I
Yeah.
can't I
Yeah.
can't keep the comb. I can't expect them to survive. They're going to drift into my other colony, so I got to quarantine them. You know, that's no
Have
fun.
you been called out to do removals where a previous colony had lived in that cavity and had been exterminated, and the new bees kind of move in and it's like gross.
Oh yes, or even just a botched extermination job, even a
Oh.
botched live removal sometimes,
Oh
where they just didn't get all.
no.
Yeah, it's like they got some of the comb and some of the bees, and then they just sort of gave up. Yeah, those
Wow.
are really really sad. Sometimes it's an old colony that was successfully exterminated, and there's just foragers robbing it. And so they think, oh, it didn't work. The bees aren't dead. And yeah, I think maybe there's a colony, but they're kind of flying weird in front of the entrance, and like something doesn't seem right. Yeah, you open it up, and it's usually a hive beetle city in there, or
Ew.
or a bunch of bodies, or there's honey dripping, and
Bee
absolutely
bodies, not human bodies.
correct bee bodies. Well, and occasionally like a gecko or something, some poor creature that tried to overwinter in there with them. But yeah, no, I've definitely found my fair share of those. I've already done several of those just this year, and they're no fun to do. I don't like being a cleanup guy. I'm first, wanting to work with animals, not
Hmm.
not with not with other people's failures and dealing with those animals. So it's disappointing for sure.
So I'm curious, when you're going in and cleaning up after somebody else's mess, do you get names? Do you
Oh, right.
do you know who's going around and doing?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, at this point, I'm in a dense metropolitan area. There's
Mhm.
somewhere around, oh God, what is it, like 6 or 7 million people in the Metroplex? And it's like,
Oh my God.
yeah, it's a large area. And so there are several large companies that make their living, that their primary income is is dusting hives. And so what they do is the classic what I call the bait and switch, where they'll tell them these yes, we'll remove the bees alive. And then the tech person shows up and they say these bees are Africanized, or they're too dangerous, or we got to kill them. So then they exterminate the hive. They say that'll be, X amount of dollars, which is already way too expensive. And then they call them back the next day and say, hey, by the way, there's a bunch of honey in your wall, and you need to pay us over $1,000 to get it out. And it's like somewhere like 4 or 5 times the extermination fee, right?
Oh
And
my
so that's
God.
sometimes why I get oh, I'll come clean up this exterminated hive because so and so didn't want to do it for less than $1,200, and I can't afford that because I'm on food stamps or whatever, and it's like, oh man, like what do I
Oh.
do? So yeah, it's rough. And I know those people. They've tried to get me to work for them. They've called me saying, hey, we saw you're doing removals, and we have more people that want live removals, and basically, between you and me, we have no clue what we're doing with live animals. So we need someone that actually knows how to conserve the colony. And yeah, so anyways, we're going to pay you 20%, and you got to do all the sales, and you got to do the whole job, and then you got to send us the check. And I was like, you know what, for some reason, this just doesn't sound
Mm-mm.
appealing.
Yeah, not at
I think I'm worth
all.
more than that. So
Yes, good for you for standing up and owning that.
yeah. Yeah, but I have some partners that'll come in, specifically guys that have worked for these kill and pull operations, and they're very excellent craftsmen. They can repair damage, they can expose the hive quickly.
Hmm.
And working with me is a little different because they got to actually suit up, and they got to actually be careful, and the bees are all alive instead of mostly dead. But yeah, anyways, these guys are always kind of on the tail end of that, having been, what, this is hard work, and we're kind of tired of getting paid too little too. So these
Yeah,
businesses have a
yeah.
high turnover rate in addition to their unsavory practices. Now, not all of them are like that. There's plenty of, honest people out there, but most of the pest control companies that have some form of honesty, they understand the liability, and they understand that these are large gatherings of animals. It's many, many, many animals, and they don't want to kill them. They don't want, and they don't want the liability associated with it. So I
Hmm.
have a relationship with some, pest control people, and it's a contentious relationship. They literally exist just to kill insects, and I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm trying to preserve all insects. And so it's cool that they'll at least meet me halfway on the honeybees. I wish they
Yeah.
wouldn't kill the wasps and everything else, but
Yeah.
you know people are going to do it anyways, so I kind of
Well,
understand it too.
let's talk a little bit about murder hornets.
Oh yes. Oh, so
Oh, I so wish that article had never been published.
yeah. So you're still getting the messages and the.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? What do you think about this? What's your
Yeah.
opinion?
Right away after that happened, I got a voicemail from somebody that I barely know. And he said his friend was on a bike ride and had gotten stung by a murder hornet.
Oh.
And could I please call him back because I'm the expert on these things?
Oh.
And I didn't call him back because I'm not the expert. And I also knew there's no way that your friend got stung by a murder hornet and needed you to call some random beekeeper that you met once, you know? But I think
Oh.
what's happening is everybody was already scared of everything because it's 2020. And now let's throw in this like prehistoric looking murder hornet and let's scare everybody. People already have a difficult enough time as it is identifying their flying, potentially stinging insects. And now this.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very surreal for me, because I definitely take a lot of interest in insects in general. So I had already sort of like spent hours reading about Asian giant hornets in general. And I wouldn't say I was an expert on them, but I knew more than the average even beekeeper about them. And it was so weird to have this like weird corner of Wikipedia knowledge suddenly become relevant. And everyone wants to know my opinion about it, right? And why are they even called murder hornets anyways? I never
Well,
got
thank
that.
you, New York Times. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
just
that
as
they
some
gave it that
sensationalism.
name. Exactly.
Because I'm
Exactly.
thinking, the amount of, that you're really not helping the name, because we both know people already don't understand the difference between, various insects. So, it gives bees a bad name in general, and it makes people scared. And I tell people my favorite thing is like, look, you have a higher chance of being bitten by a New Yorker than you do getting attacked by murder hornets. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Yeah, you're better. You're better off getting struck by lightning.
Yeah.
You're more likely to do anything else than get
Yeah.
stung by murder hornets. There's nothing to be afraid of. And of course, to the beekeepers, I say, look, these have been existing in Asia for a long time. Beekeepers have their own management strategies, just, and it's not going to be like Varroa where they've, sort of adapted. The beekeepers over there, they still lose colonies to these hornets.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so some kind of measures can be put in place, and we'll just adjust, just like we adjust to bears, just like we adjusted to the beetles.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, I've been following the Department of Agriculture in Washington and their response to it, and they're doing a fabulous job. They're engaging citizens and they're training people how to trap for them and how to track them and report them. And so I really feel like we've got the cavalry there and they're ready. They're ready
Hmm.
to identify any nests that they find, and so I'm not
Yeah.
super worried about them today.
Yeah, no, neither am I. I mean, not only are they going to take a long time to spread if they do, I have a feeling that they're more like climate restricted. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and yeah, I mean, you caught me. I was listening to another beekeeping podcast other than
Is
yours,
okay.
and they had on a fella that was his job was to go out and try to find them and trap them and make baits and that kind of thing. And I mean, those people are so smart. They know exactly what they're doing. They're extremely vigilant. I'm not worried about it either. And you know what? Pacific Northwest is a long way from Texas, so I'm sorry, Northwesterners, but if you're the sacrificial lamb, we will figure out how to if I'm wrong and they're actually a problem, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It'll take them a while to spread.
Yeah,
So,
I truly agree.
I remember it as a kid, the killer bees, they're gonna
Yeah.
get you. They're going to descend like a cloud upon you. You're just going to be walking home from school one day, and then like just a swarm of bees is going to show up and get you. That's what I always thought as a kid. It was terrifying. And then now as a beekeeper, I'm like, God, this is ridiculous. Why did we? It just makes people afraid of bees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I don't want that. I'm so glad though that that the whole bee conservation thing is in the limelight now. I got started beekeeping right as that was really hitting its like peak, and it arguably is still in its peak. And it was a big deal. So I never got to beekeep in an era where people didn't look at you and like basically treat you like a military veteran. Like we're like, thank you for your service to the bees. And I love it though. I love that they're like that now. I tell them, look, I mean, it's a little more complex than that, than me just simply being a conservationist. But thank you, and yeah, please don't kill the bees. Hire me instead to remove them alive. I even imagine this idea if those hornets got out of control, for example. Like, I think for starters, what are they, like 4 times the size of a bee? I mean, surely like some form of entrance reducing could go in place.
Yes.
Some kind of sentinel apiary situation can be in place. I mean, there's just so many. It's not even going to be close to what Varroa is like, where they, it's like a disease.
It's a buffet.
Yeah. It's a buffet. Oh gosh. Oh, and I've seen the videos. I'd already seen the videos so many times of the balling and cooking of the hornet, and at this point, people send me the video and I say thank you.
Yeah.
I don't even get into the whole like I've already seen this a million times. It is what it is, and it'll wear off. It'll wear off. People will forget all about it. They'll get distracted with the election or something else, and then we can go back to beekeeping.
I don't know. I just want to make a little prediction for when yellow jackets peak.
Oh.
Later this year, I suspect that people will be calling and saying they have a nest of murdered hornets in their yard.
I didn't even think about that. I haven't even thought about that.
Sorry.
Oh my
but
goodness.
That's
especially
because I'm sure you get this also when people have yellow jackets, they'll like call and say, I have a swarm of bees, ground bees.
Yeah.
But you're like, no, those are yellow jackets. They're not bees. They're different.
Yeah. Well, you have to really get at it. I've learned how to ask questions strategically. You don't depend on people for information. You ask. You don't ask open-ended questions. You say, "What are the bees in? Are they under a tree, or are they in a shutoff valve, in an irrigation shutoff valve or something?" And if they're like under a tree, I'm like, or just in the ground, I'm like, they're yellow jackets. You need to call an exterminator. Yeah, exactly. Call an exterminator, whatever. I don't know how to peacefully locate those. I'm working on it, but I don't know how. Versus, I've learned to ask the right kind of questions. I don't even ask people how long have the bees been there anymore. I just say, when did you notice the bees? Because that's the only information I want. People are always happy to give you their opinion or their theory about the bees and what they're I think it's because of my magnolia tree. You see, I always see them on the magnolia tree, and now they're in my wall. So should I cut down my tree? No. Oh. So a lot of the job is education, actually. Even when I'm working with non-beekeepers, it's a lot of education. which I would think you'd think I get tired of it after. I'm only a few years into it, so maybe I'm knock on wood, but not tired of it yet. So
this is the first year where I felt pretty irritated being out swarm catching and having people ask a bunch of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rough. You got to learn to enjoy the limelight. You got to learn to just lap up the attention. That's what I've found. It's like, yeah, I'm a hero. Yeah. And then I feel better about telling them, especially if I've already arranged payment beforehand. Like, I know I'm getting paid, I know you're, and you always got to entertain their story about the first time they got stung or, or my grandpa used to have bees and I always ate the honey and that kind of thing. And that's cool. People just want someone to relate to most of the time. Yeah. And it's years of being in the food service industry. I've kind of learned how to just condition myself for that and just kind of nod and listen and say, yeah, that's cool.
I went on one swarm catch this year where the gentleman and his wife were so comfortable around the bees. I mean, they were right there with me while I was gathering them, and they were asking really wonderful questions.
And you're suited up, right?
I had my veil on, but
and they're just standing there.
They were great, and I told them afterwards, I was like, you really seem like you would make really good beekeepers, because they were just so calm and curious and really, you could tell they were really moved by the whole experience. And the guy built a beautiful top bar hive and got bees.
Oh, wow. So you started
Like,
Beekeepers.
they really, and I would not normally recommend, anybody that I go and collect bees from that they become beekeepers, but there was something about their curiosity and the way they were engaged, and they were just really, you could tell it was really special for them. And so, I just was like, you should do this. This is really awesome. And they have a wonderful place and big gardens and big yard and everything. And yeah, he built the top bar hive. He drove it over here so I could see it, and he wanted to see my setup. And then he got it all set up in his garden, and he got some bees, and
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
That's actually how I got into the consulting aspect of my business, is removals, and people saying, wouldn't it be nice if I could keep these bees, like specifically these bees that have been causing me trouble? I could keep them in my backyard and this and that. And I always tell them, like, look, we can keep these bees, but like we're going to need to requeen them because they're a little testy.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have a pleasant experience.
Yeah. It makes a difference when the bees are nice.
But yeah, no, that's so cool. Thanks for letting me do it. It's super
thanks
fun.
for coming on. It's awesome to meet you. And I'm going to link up your website and your social media account so people can find you.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Okay. Well, stay safe, Jeremy. I'm glad you're a mask wearer, and keep doing all the awesome things that you're doing for the bees.
Oh, thanks so much, Mandy. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. To learn more about Jeremy, you can visit me online at beekeeperconfidential.com, where I've included links to his website, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. I hope you're all staying safe and having a fabulous bee season. Until next time, may the buzz be with you. Beekeeper Confidential is a Waggleworks production, and it's written and produced by Mandy Shaw.